I once thought I was a helpless orphan until I met him, a powerful alpha. His presence filled me with warmth and hope. But when I uncovered the darkness and pain within him, how should I choose? Chapter 8. I'm okay. I still sat upon that cold and still roof. A storm was about to come tumbling in as the clouds began to get dangerously closer. It was the prettiest sight, even though I was cold. The rain was being pushed by the wind, forcing soft droplets upon my head, while the droplets of rain and whips of air were making my ears sting slightly from his ferociousness. It was still my favorite thing in my book. Sighing softly, I decided it was time to go back inside. I shivered as I climbed downwardly towards the edge of the roof and above Ash's balcony. Adding a little spring to my step, I pushed myself up and off the roof, jumping down onto the balcony, crouching on oars to keep from hurting myself and lessening the impact of the fall. I was absolutely silent, and Ash's room was the same. His scent was faint, as if he hadn't been there for hours, and the room was still left in shambles, surprisingly. Thinking he's the alpha and all. Wouldn't you want your room fixed before you went to bed? Glancing behind me, I watched the clouds rumble and grow as the storm drew closer. The sky darkening as it did so. I'm guessing it's around 6 p.m. or something like that, with the darkness of the sky and the coldness of the air. I would say where the sun was, but my best guess was that it was most likely behind the clouds that now littered the sky like a pack of wolves. I got up from my crouched position on the balcony, quickly scurrying to get inside and shutting the doors behind me once I did so. The room still felt frosty, the air having a slight sting to it, which I was oddly comforted by. My mate's scent was faint in the room. Had he been looking for me all day? I sighed as I began to clean up the broken glass and wood from around the room. I was fixing up numerous photos and clothes. The room was a complete and utter mess, with everything strewn all over the place. The TV was broke and the screen in two. I managed to piece together that there was once a chair for his shattered desk, and most of its pieces in far corners of the room, as if they never were once combined and in one piece. It took me a good hour to get the room looking decent, and full bag of trash in the corner. A couple of dents in the walls that would be easy to fix, and the bed was made and cleaned up. The rain began to beat down against the windows in full pulsing puddles. Looking out, I watched as the sky shifted to darkness, confirming my thoughts that it was beginning to get late. The once visible green vibrant trees unable to be seen due to the heavy rainfall and fog covering the windows and sky. While in my thoughts staring outside, I heard the door bang open, not affecting me at all as my gaze stayed fixed to the invisible outside world that is covered in darkness and grey. Where why? I slightly jumped at the high-pitched voice, and I turned to see Ash stumbling into the room, his hair ruffled, only wearing jeans that hang low on his hips, easy to see his Calvin Klein underwear. There's no veil line leading down, but instead a lovely toned pack, which is very nice to look at. Glancing back at his face, I stifle a gasp as I see the slight dribble of saliva dripping out the corner of his mouth. His eyes are sunken and disgusting looking, and the stench of alcohol hit me like a ton of bricks. Clutched in his left hand is a half-empty bottle of vodka. His right is keeping him steady as he leans against the door, looking as if he's about to faint. I asked you a question, you mute bitch, where were you? I cringed at his voice. Werewolves don't get drunk easily, so he must have drunk a lot. How long was I up on that roof? But knowing how quickly our systems process alcohol, you should be sober in around 30 minutes or something like that. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelbe. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. In a quick as a flash Ash threw the bottle of vodka in my direction. Being too consumed in my thoughts, it hit me square on the forehead, making me stumble to the floor, hitting my head on the wall as I fell down. I quickly got up off the floor, knowing that if I stayed down too long I'll be given more of a punishment. Ash began to stalk over to me, more like warbled as he did. He began to raise his fist ready for a punch, and I managed to dodge it as his fist buried itself deep inside the wall's plaster. At this moment I was terrified. This was why I never trusted anyone. In the end they always end up hurting you emotionally or physically, it doesn't matter. But one way or another I knew Ash was gonna hurt me, and this was most likely just the beginning. Ash ripped his arm from the wall, the small pieces of plaster littering over the carpet, probably painful to step on as well, so I made sure to watch my steps. I should have kept fucking that bitch Whitney. You're just a pain in my ass. His words were loud and cruel, my soul breaking each time he spoke so poorly of me. He raised his hand and landed a large slap against my cheek, knocking me to the floor once again. This time my feet tripped over one another, and with an already pretty bad ankle it sprained easily. I could feel blood trickling down my face as I stumbled back on my bum, trying desperately to get away from the enraged Ash stalking towards me. The tears only added to the blood flowing freely down my cheeks like they have done so many times before. I reached the corner of the room sooner than I had expected. Ash continued to lazily stalk towards me, his fist still raised in an attempted punch or slap type of thing. Trying to shuffle back more, I knocked the bag with all the rubbish in it, pitting it over so all the insides fell to the floor in a big pile. I inwardly smiled at what fell out. Great, you're even making a fucking mess. Just kill yourself already. That's what you were planning on the beach, weren't you? His words stung, but they filled me with hate and anger. How dare he complain to me? Does he know what I went through? I never even had proper parents. Why the fuck is he mad? Grabbing the broken chair leg that fell out of the bag, I bounced to my feet, swinging the leg so it hit Ash square in the jaw. I watched in slow motion as the old wood connected with his cheek, making him stumble back and onto the floor. His eyes were unfocused as he continued to dribble uncontrollably. I was so furious with him I could barely contain it. Did he get whipped with silver? Was he wrapped by countless men? He wasn't even mutated like me. He got a fucking family. He got love and affection. He was an alpha, for God's sake. And he is complaining about me. Blinded by red-hot rage, I struck him with the stick so many times I could barely count. I was just hitting him for the fun of it now, and I enjoyed it. He shoved the stick out of my hand, making me stumble to the floor yet again as he towered above me. I could tell he was sober now. You could see it in his eyes. He was also continuing to wipe the dribble from his mouth. Why the fuck are you beating me with a stick? Also, where were you? Still trapped in the fear state of mind, I crawled away from him, my back hitting against the wall. My tail was pulled tightly in between my legs, showing the fear that I felt. All the anger that I once had vanishing as he became sober. Ash seems baffled by this as I continue to sob in the corner. The one thing I hate is this phrase that I learnt while I was living with my old pack, which it turned out was very true. Drunk words are sober thoughts. Everything he said about me was what he thought while sober, and every day he lived with me. He hated me. Why are you bleeding? What the actual fuck is going on? I stopped listening after that. I couldn't actually talk with him, and I didn't feel completely comfortable yet. So I began to crawl across the ground as Ash continued to banter. Ash continued to banter in the center of the room at me completely, as that I had already reached the side table beside the bed, where I left the little notebook and marker. Scribbling the words down quickly, I threw the notepad at Ash's feet so it just knocked his toes. He noticed instantly and saw me leaning against the side table using it as I steadied myself to my feet. Ash scanned the notepad quickly, his eyes raking over the page. I came in from the roof. After I cleaned you, stumbled in drunk and begun shouting. Ash glanced up from the page, taking in my unsteady form as I sat on the side table to keep myself from using my hurt ankle. What else did I do? Ash asked, obviously realizing now that I was most likely hurt from his drunken rage. He didn't need to be told twice, and I knew that was what he wanted the answer, so delaying the process or even writing a lie wasn't going to help. He threw the notepad over to me, and I caught it with a little hesitation and began to write again. The feeling of marker to paper felt great. I threw it at his feet again, my arms slightly aching from what I bet the shit out of him. He scanned the paper again, slower this time, taking in the one singular word I wrote, yes. As if summing everything up, Ash looked up to me, the tears brimming in his eyes. You were defending yourself. From me. I solemnly nodded my head once, knowing there's no point in writing again. Ash let out a sound that could only be sounded as one of pure grief from his throat. You could hear as he tried to stop it, but the fact was it was very easy to hear. With tears dripping down his face, he ran over to me and wrapped me in his arms, his hands latching around my waist, and I gladly accepted. He held on for me for dear life, mumbling sorries all the while. Then, for the first time in about 7 years, I spoke to words that I haven't been able to honestly think for all my life. I'm okay. My voice scratchy like a broken record, but the words could be heard clearly. Chapter 9, Memories and Bedtime's W. What? Ash mumbled to me through my shirt. He glanced up at me, keeping his arms still firmly latched around my waist as he gazed up at me through his tear-filled eyes, and I couldn't help but feel a pain in my chest as I looked at him. Mocha. Why? I spoke again, a little harder, but getting through my words without too much difficulty. Ash seemed to completely brighten up at the sound of my voice, and I couldn't help but laugh as he gripped me tighter and spun us in a circle, showing how happy he truly was. That's amazing. He spun us around, his laughs and my chuckles filling the air as if it was the only music needed in our lives. I won't push you to say anything else. He let go of me softly, so I touched the ground like an angel coming to earth. When he finished placing me, he gazed down at me and planted a soft kiss on my forehead. My cheeks immediately began burning up at the gesture. Thank you. Your voice is gorgeous. I softly smiled up at Ash. The day's events finally taking effect on me as I let out a large yawn, my hand unable to muffle all of it. Do you want to go to bed? I nodded my head once. I had a spare bedroom made for you. I know that you most likely don't want to sleep in the same bed again. My whole body began to burn at the thought of the event. I was completely and utterly embarrassed. Ash softly chuckled. The room is across the hall, come, I'll take you. I would like to say all the fear was gone from when Ash attacked me, but a small part of my soul just kept urging me to run away so I didn't have to face him again, and so I won't be hurt again. Ash trudged through the destroyed room. The broken glass still littered the floor, and there was a rich alcoholic smell filling the room which made me scrunch up my nose in disgust. I've had alcohol before and I loved it, even going through an alcoholic phase during my time at the pack. Then they found out and I received a very severe punishment. Ash was literally dragging me as he walked through the room while I slowly hobbled behind him, scared to put too much pressure on my ankle. The wounds healed. Scars never fade. At the sight of all the destroyed objects, I remembered that I still have blood trickling down my face from when Ash threw that bottle at me. By now we had entered the spare room. It was simple one, but it had greys and dark greys littering the room, all complementing each other with white furniture. The carpet was my favorite. It was as if it was brand new, and I loved the softness. Come and get me if something happens. Tu m'as été extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I nodded my head once as Ash began to walk away. I got a little stressed. I grabbed his hand before he could walk any further, and he raised an eyebrow at me with a smirk playing at his soft lips. With a slight blush appearing on my cheeks. Why am I blushing so much? I pointed to the steady stream of blood still running down my face. His smirk turned to a frown in an instant as he caught sight of the blood that he caused. I'll clean that up this time. Come on, the bathroom's right there. Ash gripped my hand firmly and is dragging me to the bathroom, joining to the lovely bedroom. It was a white and grey setting in the bathroom, and I didn't mind. It was pretty and simple, which is sometimes better than over-the-top stuff. Ash grabbed my waist once we were fully in the bathroom, the tingles spreading like wildfire as he placed me softly on the countertop, my feet dangling off the ground. I really hope I grow some more. I'm tiny. Ash opened the cupboard that wasn't behind my feet and pulled the first aid kit out this time. I'm hoping he knows what he's doing. I already know what you're thinking, and I asked the nurse what to do, so this time I have an all-right idea. I swiveled my ears to the front of me and listened. My soul began to break in half when he said nurse. Maybe he doesn't want me anymore. But I have a pretty good poker face. I've survived whippings while keeping a poker face on the entire time. You were gone for a good amount of time. The whole pack went insane even though they haven't met you. You're their future, Luna, so please don't run off again. Tu m'as été extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I nodded as my tail began shaking with excitement from our close range. But one thought lingered in my mind. How long did I stay on that fucking roof? Ash grabbed a cotton ball from the kit and began to dap away what little blood there was. I sighed in content as he did so, shutting my eyes as he continued to dab. The sensation was soon lost and the strong scent of alcohol filled the room again. I knew what he was doing. The stupid alcohol trick that gets rid of all the frickin' germs, and I mentally prepared myself for the pain. When I felt the contact of it on my skin, I couldn't help but relax into it. Pain was a remedy for me. It was something that always provided me with pleasure and comfort. You like this? Ash asked, a bit perplexed, and I slowly nodded my head, sighing as he cleaned the scratch on my forehead. Ash began to mumble, probably thinking I wouldn't hear, but I heard it very clearly. What the hell did that place do to you? I frowned as he said those words. I always got asked that by him, and even if he wasn't asking me, you could see it in his brown orbs that always for my well-being. I didn't like to be this way, it just turned out like that. It's what happened, and it will forever stay with me and haunt me in the back of my mind. People always say things like, "You'll get over it," or "It's in the past," but every day I have to be reminded of my life. Scars on my back show the numerous punishments I received. The bruises along my thighs and legs show how I was used for many different purposes, and after my family rejected me, I got a single word tattooed at the bottom of my back. In big bold letters surrounded by flowers and vines is one word that kept me going. Relentless. The word goes two ways for me: one, how I should always keep trying even though I've been let down so many times, and how everyone in this world is always out to hurt me. No matter how much I tried, they're going to forever hate me. Where'd you get this scar from? I was brought out of my thoughts as Ash spoke to me. He was brushing my black hair back, revealing more of my face. I knew what he was looking at. I had a large singular claw mark going over my eyebrow. The flesh healed over and it's only pink, but for some reason my eyebrow just never grew over it, and I forever had a soft pink mark across my eyebrow. I'm still technically mute, so I didn't respond. I just continued to let Ash gaze at my face. I felt a little over-revealing and only Ash's shirt as he gazed at me with so many emotions, and I hated it. I began to squirm slightly under his rough gaze. "Anything else, or?" Ash asked me after he finished raping me. I smiled and nodded my head. My ankle wasn't taking any more, and the scratch on my forehead is healing up nicely. "Come on, I'll take you to bed." I smiled at the thought of going to sleep. I felt so tired, and I really just wanted to lie down. I seriously felt like I was about to collapse from exhaustion. Ash picked me up off the countertop, my legs naturally swinging around his waist and my arms around his neck as his hands kept me supported under my butt. It seemed satisfying to Ash as a small growl of approval erupted from his chest that made my tail shake in happiness. Ash must have noticed my tail because his chest vibrated with a chuckle, and I felt as he walked out of the bathroom, turning off the light. As he did so, he pulled the covers back before dropping me and bet a slight bounce. As I didn't, I giggled at the feeling, but that giggle soon turned into a yawn as he softly laughed, pulling the covers up and over me. "Sleep tight. Get me if anything happens. Anything at all. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Ash was firm yet sweetened. At the end of his words, he planted a soft kiss to the top of my forehead, and I basked in the tingles that came. "Night precious." And with that, Ash left the room, but a small gesture he left me. The door was slightly open, and the light from the lamp turned on, and the hallway filled the room with a soft orange glow, and adding to that the moonlight seemed to manage to get by the closed curtains and seep to half the room. Basked in a soft blue glow wafted through my nose. It only added to the perfect setting for my sleep as I shut my eyes. I felt dazed and distraught. Nothing seemed real. All I wanted was to sleep, but even if I tried moving, I couldn't. Opening my eyes slightly, I watched the room around me. It was cold, damp and lifeless. All except me placed in the center of the room, completely without clothes. Each of my wrists was held by a silver chain connected to the ceiling of the torture chamber, and I had silver shackles on both my ankles connecting to each other, so if I tried to run it would only be a shuffle. The large metal door creaked open, the noise being heard for most likely miles. Ayman walked in, and I already knew who it was. As per usual, he was my biggest fan apparently. He was my biggest supporter. He believed I was powerful. He knew I was strong. I liked him for that. He knew that my mutation wouldn't happen for at least a reason. No one knew why, but it was nice to know that someone still kinda believed in me. He wanted me to be only his, that's the thing, but he wanted to make sure I was mature enough before he did anything. He was training me. His plan for me was for me to become his private trained assassin. No one would know of my existence, therefore, and no one would know where to look. His plan was to weaken all the closest alphas privately as he attacked their land, and after they were weakened I would bring them to him so he could finish the job, giving him all the power he wanted. In return, he promised that I would be set free after the task was done, meaning death. "Nice to see you again, princess." I cringed at the nickname. "I understand you're tired, but after this you have to clean the pack house so it's ready in the morning. So I'll make this fast and painful. Don't cry out this time." He went to the corner of the room where the silver whip lay on the ground. He picked it up very slowly, building the tension and fear that I was feeling. He didn't let me see his face, but he continued to stroll in the shadows as the whip dragged behind him, the metal clinking as it glided along the floor. Soon enough he was behind me. Relentless. He spoke the word before he struck me. I woke up in a cold sweat, gasping for air. I clutched my chest, trying to calm my racing heart that wouldn't slow down a beat, as the adrenaline pumped through my system. Silent tears fell down my cheeks. It was one of the things I hated. I would always wake up like this. The nightmares always came, and they never have once not happened. Unless I was with Ash. Thinking it over, I remembered all the times I was either with Ash or close by that I didn't get a nightmare. It was clear that the mate bond that we shared helped me heal from my experiences. I literally leapt from bed, my ankle fully healed, and sprinted to the door in anticipation. Fully opening my door instantly, I ran out so I was just outside his door. But I couldn't. I strained my ears to hear soft and clear snores, and I couldn't bring myself to wake him from his sleep. Sighing, I didn't want to go to sleep, but I barely even know the house, but I've been living in for the past couple of days. This hallway seemed lifeless. No one else seemed to occupy this floor. Straining my ears to check for anyone else's heartbeats or breaths, no sounds were heard confirming my assumptions. So I began to walk down the hallways, looking into the rooms that had their doors open. I found an office which had Ash's scent most dominant in there, so I was guessing it's his. There was a theater game room, but a huge screen with a projector on it, but they somehow managed to hook up the gaming system to the projector so it showed up on the large screen. I snooped at all his games. I've never played, but I watched the teenagers do it back at Moonrise. Becoming bored easily, I went to the next room to find it a comfortable library music room which no scents would dominate except that of a small mouse in the corner. Its blood was pulsing and cure it must taste. I shook my head from the thoughts. What the hell was that? Sighing, I stepped into the room. What caught my attention the most was the old grand piano that sat in the corner of the room. A smile broke out upon my face. During the Omega earning lessons, I was taught piano with Jules. She had 3 kids of her own, but always managed to spare a little time for me. I wish she was still alive. After one Rouge attack, she didn't make it to the safe house in time, choosing to save her kids instead. Her mate was distraught, but after I told him what she did and how the best way to make sure her death wasn't in vain was to take care of their 3 kids. Jacob then became the best ever father figure to his kids, and I helped out when I could. Walking over to the piano, I sat down on the seat, running my fingers along the black and white keys. Then with steady fingers I began to play, softly humming the lyrics but having the full orchestra in my mind, the words sung by my voice inside my head. I remember tears streaming down your face when I said, "I'll never let you go." When all those shadows almost killed your light, I remember you said, "Don't leave me here alone." But all that's dead and gone and past tonight. Just close your eyes, the sun is going down. You'll be alright, no one can hurt you now. Come morning light you, and I'll be safe and sound. Don't you dare look out your window, darling, everything's on fire. The war outside our door keeps raging on. Hold on to this lullaby even when the music's gone. Just close your eyes, the sun is going down. You'll be alright, no one can hurt you now. Come morning light you, and I'll be safe and sound. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ooh la 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 la, la 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 la. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Oh la la la, just close your eyes, you'll be alright. Come morning light, you and I'll be safe and sound. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I end this song is called Safe and Sound by Taylor Swift. She's a lovely artist, all credit goes to her. Pushing the final couples of keys to the song, I couldn't help but remember Jules and all her glory and how nice she was to me while everyone else shunned me out. Tears were pouring down my face and a strangled sob made its way out of my throat. The sounds of footsteps drew next to me and my ears pricked up, locating the sound instantly. Ash stood nearby, his face tired as he must have woken up, but his eyes were soft and beautiful, his face a soft smile, and it made me smile up at him. He wore only a pair of sweats that hung low, and I couldn't help but marvel his 8-pack. He drew closer till he stood behind me, and he began hugging me from behind in a kind of comforting gesture than any. Couldn't sleep. I nodded my head once. Come with me, I think I can help. This room is yours to use at any time, remember that. I smiled. I was to play that piano again. I haven't played in a while. In our old pack, getting your hands on a piano was like finding gold, and we got to spend a good amount of time playing before we were either punished for playing or had to make a hasty escape before they caught on. As Ash led me down the halls, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Was someone watching? You can sleep with me tonight. Mates apparently help each other sleep. I nodded once as he opened the door to his room. I glanced behind us quickly and I swear I saw the Darkness smile, but I couldn't tell if it was a soft smile or a crazy smile because it was the only thing I could see, but either way it gave me a nauseous feeling. Ash dragged me into his room and immediately he climbed into bed, holding the covers up as a gesture for me to get in. With hesitant steps I walked closer and I stepped inside the covers of the bed, wary watching the door in case the Darkness made an appearance again, but I didn't have time to look as Ash turned me over, so I faced his chest and he pulled me so close not one area of my front was not touching him, and my tail glided along the sheets in happiness. Good night, precious. Landing a soft kiss to my forehead, I snuggled closer and went into a dreamless sleep. Chapter 10. Cooking breakfast. Waking up to the smell. Tingles and the sparks from your mate is probably the best way to wake up in the morning. Sue me for having one of those cliché movie princess wake-up scenes where the birds are chirping, the sun is shining, and a rainbow is literally sparkling in the morning rain. Geez, never thought I would be so happy in my life. Until I felt a familiar bulge against my inner thigh. Well, at least it's not a cliché princess movie anymore. Right. I screamed and jumped off the bed, realizing that I had literally been sleeping on top of Ash in only a shirt and he could have taken advantage of my vulnerability in the night. Ash woke up immediately after I screamed and looked at me with curiosity. What happened that you had to scream bloody murder right off the bat this morning? Ash said, yawning all the while. He still laid down in bed, a very noticeable bulge under the sheets, looking like frickin' Mount Rushmore right then and there. Ash watched my gaze and saw what I was looking at, immediately blushing like a crazy person. Oh shit, I'm sorry, Ava. He began getting out of bed and I turned, looking the other way, not wanting to know if he wore clothes or not. I heard him shuffling to the bathroom door shut quietly and the shower turned on. The room was still pretty trashed, but I didn't really mind at this point in time. It was better than it was before. What caught my eye was the pile of neatly folded clothes sitting on Ash's chest of drawers, which specifically were the clothes I wore before I was put in Ash's shirt. My panties were there as well and I literally sprinted for them, quickly grabbing them off the shelf. I pulled them on fast. If you didn't remember, they were the comfortable lacy kind with the coloring even more sexual with red and black. Then I threw on my kind of silk kind of tank top nightgown that was comfortable and reached mid. It feels so good to be back in my clothes for a change. I'm not saying Ash's shirt is bad or anything, but it just made me feel small and vulnerable. I turned around, searching the room for any sign of clock phone so I could check the time, and sure enough Ash had one sitting right in his bedside table, the numbers glowing clearly. 613 damn shit. I'm kinda a bitch now. But I've always been the type that gets up from bed early. I had to back at the pack anyway, so my body has just naturally adjusted to it. Deciding Ash is going to take his sweet time in the bathroom, I waltzed out his bedroom in a rather good mood than any. I tracked down the kitchen quickly. I did say I was going to cook in that kitchen, and here's my best chance doing just that. That house was eerily quiet, not a peep could be heard, but the sound of blood pulsing in veins swept through my ears, making my hunger rise. I shook my head. What the F you see? Oh shit. The moon goddess told me. She literally sat next to me and told me I was a hybrid. How did I forget? That is just going to make things even more complicated now with me and Dash's relationship. This could most likely ruin everything. I would be gone. Shaking my head, I still wanted this to be one of those cliché princess stories that there lives a victim, that nothing could possibly go wrong. So I carried on my way down the stairs, walking through the door to the kitchen. It was silent. The kitchen was the same as yesterday when I walked in for a couple of minutes before I fainted. Grabbing all the things I needed from the large silver fridge, I began cooking a huge buffet. I wasn't sure how many people were here, but my werewolf hearing never lies and there's over 50. By doing this it means the own gazer can relax for a morning and everybody can get on with their day peacefully and calmly. Putting out all the ingredients like bacon, sausage. To my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Pancakes, fruit and some different drinks. I began setting up the large tables with clean cutlery as the food cooked slowly in the kitchen. I was a professional at this, helping all the Omega females cook without anyone realizing, because I bet if they did they wouldn't want to eat it, because I touched it. The thought made me hesitant to continue, but realized thing is almost finished. I decided to just go ahead with it, and if they weren't gonna eat it, their loss. Entering back into the kitchen, I placed all the foods on plates and set them all on the tables along with juices lining the food. Stepping back, I admired my work. Using my tail to get rid of a bit of fluff on the corner of the table, I was fully satisfied and went back to the kitchen to clean up the mess I made. It wasn't a mess. It was a bomb site. I bounced at the opportunity to clean and begun packing things away. Wiping benches, cleaning dishes, and even taking out the trash, and the kitchen was returned to its normal state. Alfie, oh shit. Ash's feet were literally pounding around the top floors and then down the stairs as it echoed through the house like no tomorrow. Everybody up, find your lunar shits, fucking run away. Ash immediately stopped once he reached the kitchen and dining area. I stood in the middle of the entire kitchen while you had a clear view of the dining room where breakfast was set up. I looked down, too afraid to look into Ash's angry eyes. That's when I heard all the other steps coming our way. Everybody frantic and stressed trying to find me. I pulled my ears tightly back and pulled my tail in between my legs, the comforting feeling it brought making me feel better already. You could hear as everyone stopped next to or near Ash. First time meeting the pack is nice, right? The Luna made breakfast. Fuck yeah. My ears perked up at the sound of an unknown male and the crowd began cheering, filling into the dining room, some stopping to thank me or just to gaze at my body. I nodded my head silently at them all, and no one pressed further to hear me speak or make a sound, and I was very thankful for that. My tail was shaking in happiness and I was smiling a broad smile. Slight chuckles coming out my mouth as boys and girls alike kept making funny comments about how awesome I was to make breakfast. They liked me. Ash stared at me, the only one that stayed back from the large crowd, and walked closer, slowly enveloping me in a large hug. You're just too good at first impressions, aren't you? I snuggled into the hug, my arms snaking around his waist on their own without my consent. My ears were pulled back so I seemed smaller, and my tail made an attempt at wrapping around outer forms to make the hug last longer and the tingles continue. Now, even though you don't want to, you need to eat something, even if it's just an apple. I immediately went nauseous when he mentioned eating. All that I had to eat at moonrise was this disgusting soup dish that was horrible, but I had to eat it anyway, throwing up immediately after. I didn't respond, and Ash took that as a good sign when it was meant to be bad. He gripped my hand, the tingles going through my body making my tail shake in anticipation as he led us to the dining room where everyone was sitting laughing and just plain out smiling. It filled me with joy. No one was ever happy at moonrise under Alfie Den's rule. It was just an everyday emotion to be upset and to talk only when spoken to. But seeing this pack just made me all giddy inside, and I smiled everyone as Ash led us next to the tables and around the chairs, ducking our heads every once in a while as food was thrown around the room. It made me laugh. Ash led us to the end of the tables where one smaller one was set up. Most likely for the higher-ranking wolves, as there weren't many chairs and only for other people sat. A couple sat side by side. How do I know they're a couple is how the redhead managed to jam her tongue down her boyfriend's throat when he was trying to eat. You could see it annoyed him. His emerald eyes said so. But he was enjoying the attention of his mate. You could see it in his eyes as well. The redhead had red hair, as you could tell, and these lovely dark blue eyes that were beautiful. The guy on the other hand had green eyes and brown hair, no highlights, just brown hair, and they both seemed so simple yet so perfect, and it made me feel kinda embarrassed. On the other side of the table was who I could tell was Ash's sister, who I still don't know her name, and a guy who seemed to just be enjoying her company like good friends. They weren't mates, but they could have always had the best friend bond or protector bond there, which I'm guessing is what happened. As you could tell, Ash's sister had blonde hair and brown eyes like Ash's, and the guy sitting next to her was that man that found me on the beach and was in my hospital room. Still kinda feel guilty about it. He had brown hair and brown eyes with a nice build. Other than the bees were the only people sitting on this table, the couple sitting on one side on the length of the table with Ash's sister, and that guy who was on the beach on the other side, so 2 seats were left spare in the middle. I couldn't help but think that's where Ash and I meant to sit. And of course my assumptions were proven right, as Ash sat next to the redhead and I sat next to Ash's sister. I'm glad I wasn't sitting next to someone I didn't know, so I wasn't pressured into speaking, but it was nice to be surrounded by people who actually liked me for a change. Until Ash stood up. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" Ash yelled out to everyone, and they all turned to the alpha, all eyes and ears in him. Not one person was disobeying. "Thank you. Now we all know that I have found my mate." The crowds erupt into cheers and clapping, so I would like to present to you your new Ununa to be Ava. Everyone was applauding and I broke out into a smile. "Stand up, precious." Ash offered his hand to me and I gripped it, standing up beside him, so we stood in front of a good percentage of the pack. Everyone died down just watching me. There were so many people. You can trust them. Ash mumbled close to my ear and it made my ears twitch from his hot breath. Oh, I managed to squeak out. Everybody was astonished at my voice. It wasn't anything like it was that of an angel's, but actually how it was so scratchy and not used. "May I ask a question, Luna?" A younger-looking girl near the front asked. She was only around 15 or something. I nodded my head to continue. "Were you mute?" Everybody wanted an answer, and they wanted one now. You could tell everybody was talking through the mind link, asking each other questions. "Why, yes," I squeaked out. A collective gasp signaled around the room, and Ash became tense and angry after. "You're gonna ditch me for that bitch, Ash?" All eyes went off me, the conversation long forgotten as a pissed off Wolf stormed into the room, her hands balled up into fists at her sides. She wore the most trash-est outfit of all time, with a tiny skirt and crop top that looked more like a bikini top than clothing. "Whitney, go AWA, oh please Ash. We had something and you're leaving me for this skank." Whitney. That was the girl that must have had a relationship with Ash before I came here. But let me tell you this, she was your typical whore, with bright blonde hair that looked bleached with blue eyes to match. Her skin was as orange as a literal orange, and she looked like a newmpel unpaid. "Whitney, I will not let you do this to my mate. She is your lure." Ash roared at the table, slamming his fists down, all the while making the room shake. Whitney's wolf side visibly flinched at how she made her alpha mad, but human side kept pressing forward. "Imperfect for you, yet you hang with this mons." She didn't get to finish her sentence as I grabbed the butter knife from the container and literally tore it. The knife soared through the air, going right over her shoulder in its way, slicing off a couple of strands of her fake blonde hair, landing in the wall behind her. She was petrified, her eyes wide as saucers, as were the rest of the crowds that were watching. Ash was also scared, like who would expect that the mutated girl had been a trained assassin specializing in the killing of alphas. I got up from my seat, walking down the I love tables right by Whitney, who was watching me warily in case I would do anything. She should have watched her legs as I tripped her over with my tail, which sent some of the room into hysterics as she fell to the floor in a big sobbing heap. I came to the wall that the knife was implanted in and pulled it out roughly, throwing it behind me, knowing that it would land in the floorboards right at Whitney's feet. Then I left the room with my head held high, but in fact I was petrified at the consequences that will come. Chapter 11, Weakness. It was then, as I closed the door behind me in Ash's bedroom, that I collapsed to my knees, my head resting against the closed door. I felt weak. Physically and mentally I felt utterly weak. The lightheadedness must have been from the lack of food, but I've never felt weak from it. This is when I truly did not know what was happening to me, and I cringed as pain began sweeping through my body. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ash called out from downstairs, probably forgetting about the fear and shock he felt after I almost killed Whitney, bitch. I'm guessing he's gonna be more than pissed off. Being an alpha, he has an urge to protect his pack, and I just threatened them even though she started it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. He was closer now at this point, and I quickly tried to gather myself to my feet so he wouldn't know that I'm weak. I staggered to my feet. My tail was nothing like it usually was. It looked like it belonged to a dead animal, and my ears were as tense on my head as I listened for Ash's feet closing in. I just made it to my feet as Ash pummeled at the door down. Weird I didn't hear him. But from the brute force of the door being shoved, I was thrown to the floor, and that's where I stayed. Shit. Ash immediately bent down to help me, my body like a limp corpse in his arms. I didn't know what was happening to me, and my mind was in a daze. I don't know, but my body felt as if it was just a massive pile of jelly, moving about with the earth but technically not moving an inch from its original position. Look at me please. Ash gripped my head as he held me bridal style in an attempt for the mate bond to heal me. His hand was rested on my cheek, supporting my head, forcing me to look into his eyes. How much I loved those eyes. But, in all honesty, I think it has something to do with my vampire side. Ash's eyes glazed over for a moment, making his brown orbs a lighter shade, losing its lovely lively color. But it soon returned, his frown etched into his face as he watched me. I could hear his blood pulsing through his veins, but it made me sick and hungry at the same time, and I fought for control. I squirmed and groaned in his embrace as he held me closer to him, making it worse yet better at the same time. Better. It was cruel to feel this way. Half my body wanted Ash to wrap his arms around me and never let me go, while another part wanted Ash to lean that 1 or 2 inches closer so I could penetrate the flesh of his neck and suck his warm crimson blood from his body. I felt so weak in his presence. Please don't leave me. I just found you. Don't go. It broke my heart to hear him say this, but I would rather him watch me die than see the monster I am as I drain all the blood from his body. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Let me take the Luna and let us see what we can do with her. Ash softly growled as who I presume is a pack member trying to help me. But at this point my body felt so droopy and my eyes were closing, and it was a trial just to attempt to keep them open. My ears then went. I couldn't hear anything, but I could faintly see the fuzzy outline of Ash yelling at people and countless pack members trying to help me. ASSH. I mumbled out, barely audible, but I guess he heard it as Ash turned to me, his face literally dripping with tears. He screamed at me, you could tell, but my ears were too far gone to even try and make out what he was trying to say. All I could tell was whatever he was trying to tell me seemed really important. But my world became one with that of darkness. Ash POV. Eva. I screamed at her. I lay in a crumple heap on the floor with her in my arms, her eyes fluttering shut, and her breathing coming more distant with each breath, and heartbeat becoming ever so faint. I came up here to yell at her, question her, but now I may not even be able to see her beautiful grey eyes again. She looked so lifeless and pale in my arms. Her silk night and top was revealing, and you could easily make out the red panties she wore underneath, but I didn't care for 1 second as I held her in my arms, the life draining out of her faster than my pleas for help can reach. Alpha, please, we're losing the Luna fast. If you don't let us take her, she may die. Carter the pack doctor tried reasoning with me, but my wolf side had taken over, and anyone trying to take her away will face his wrath. Don't touch her, I yelled out, gripping her limp body closer to me, hoping she would heal instantly from our body's close radius. My tears weren't visible, but now I let them fall. I was too high and mighty to cry in front of anyone else. I haven't shed a tear since that day. Shaking the thoughts from my head, I pushed my face into the crook of her neck, searching for any type of a pulse. Arms gripped me from behind and I growled at the contact as it wasn't that of my mates. Keep him restrained, I need to figure out what's wrong with her. I could hear a voice amongst the crowds that had gathered, but my wolf had pushed my thoughts to the furthest corner of my mind, which I had no way to get out. I tried countless times to break down the wall he had built up, but it was so strong and sturdy, the love for his mate that my wolf shows is infinite, as he attempted to claw and growl out of the grasp of all the pack members and nurses holding me back so they can try and save Ava. Inject the wolf's bane so at least the alpha's human side can watch. Immediately after the words were spoken out, a pinch was felt on the back of my neck, barely even noticeable, but I instantly felt my wolf side calm down, his body and my mind collapsing to the floor. As for in real life, I took full control, running to Dr. Carter's side, where he held a very limp and lifeless Ava. Is she gonna be alright? I asked the doctor, a bit angry and sad in front of me, but what was plastered on his face was complete and utter confusion. I kept my gaze down on Ava's perfect face besides the one scar on her eyebrow, though I still had no idea where it came from. Her wolf fears were lax and weren't moving unlike all the other times I've seen, as they were tense as a board. Her tail was like a wet cloth moving, wherever it was pushed or pulled, but completely lifeless like the rest of her body. The only thing that moved was that of her lips and her eyes twitching. Everything else was yet to move. We need a blood transfusion stat. I looked up at the doctor, confused. Why would he need a blood transfusion? There is literally no percentage of blood left in her body. It's as if it was completely drained out. Carter drifted off, his words hard to hear amongst the commotion, more to himself than anyone else. But I heard his words, yet I didn't think much of it, as I only cared about the well-being of my mate laying barely alive next to me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I glanced to Carter as he called my name, tears building up in his eyes. Her blood type is unknown to us, and if what you say is true, as she is not in any records, we have no way of knowing which blood type she is. I'm sorry. My wolf resurfaced again, the wolfsbane quickly wearing off at the mention of Ibe. I listened as Iva's breath finally evened out and her eyes became still. Her lips staying parted, slightly turning a light shade of purple. But one thing was for certain. She was gone. I gazed at her still from my body, not yet ready to face the truth that her mate was gone. I held her hand, quickly checking for a pulse. Nothing. I went to her neck, checking for a pulse. Nothing. No Ava. I screamed in anger and sadness. I just find my mate, the one true love of my life, find out she's been tortured and beaten most of her life, and now I lost her. Alpha Ash. A young girl came screaming into the room, unaware of the countless faces and looks of everyone devastated about the death of their Luna. The young girl pounced upon me, her small arms wrapping around my muscular arm. I was about to throw her off, as it wasn't for the next couple of words she screamed directly in my ear. Rouges are attacking. The only thought that was going through my mind was, I'll kill them all. Chapter 12, Bloodthirsty Ash POV. I was hesitant to leave Ava in this state. She looked so peaceful, laying on my carpet motionless, while the whole room was filled with screams of terror. I didn't spare it one glance as I said my final goodbyes to my beauty. It was truly a representative to the metaphor. You don't know what you have till it's gone. I hated the fact that I was rude. I tried to be kind, but my aggressive and over-emotional side always seemed to make an appearance, which somehow managed to make everyone leave me. I leant down close, my breath fanning her cool skin, making her limp and lifeless hair rise from my attempts at controlled breathing. I planted a soft kiss upon Ava's forehead, her body not even taking account in what I did. It only made my fears confirmed. She's gone. Love you, precious. Stroking her hair out of her face one last time. I stood up off the carpet, standing next to her motionless body. The room, no activity of any sounds, but war cries raged on outside the pack house. I always pictured the perfect mate. Or no mate at all, but when I ended up with Ava, I was confused yet flattered. She was such an interesting creature, with such an interesting backstory. I think I instantly fell in love with her. We have to leave. The pack members are dying out there. My wolf Micah yelled angrily in my mind, now fully back from the effects of the wolfsbane. He was ready to protect his pack from danger. It was a natural alpha instinct to protect their pack, but my wolf was torn between leaving our dead mate's body or helping our pack members win a losing battle. My wolf unconscious chose the former. Let's make Ava proud. I voiced to more myself than my wolf. Not wanting a response, I quickly blocked my wolf out of my head, mentally preparing myself for battle. I sprinted out of the room and onto the balcony, throwing the French doors out of the way, the glass smashing all over the concrete balcony, but I paid no insight to the broken house and the effect it had on my feet as I bounded from the railing and down onto the soft grass below, shifting mid-air into my wolf. He was black with electric blue eyes that compared to my human form were quite a sight. My wolf was so plain yet intimidating. The colors of wolves were passed on by genes, not anything to do with status, but I fully knew why my wolf was black. All the greatest alpha wolves had black coats of shimmering fur. My attention was shifted back to the fighting as I heard different cries and howls signaling along the backyard of the once happy and joyful pack house. The backyard was a mess, wolves fighting everywhere, women running around carrying their kids, and children, some were crying, screaming for someone to help them or to help them find their mummy. The once soft and perfectly trimmed grass was now a dark red shade like crimson that made my insides do a backflip. The bodies that laid on the ground were mostly without clothes, as when you were killed in Wolf and you return to your human form, which we don't retrieve with clothes after we shift because they all went to shreds. One body was especially nauseating. A woman laid on the ground, her eyes wide open, but no pupils or color, just. It was obvious her eyes had rolled to the back of her head, making her look possessed, and it scared me, to be honest. Her face had slight scratches over it, and the corner of her mouth had a streak of red running down her chin and onto the grass below, signaling internal injuries. They were quite obvious, these internal injuries. Her wounds made me sick, as her whole chest down to her stomach was scratched and clawed until her insides were forced out of her. The intestines and kidneys flopping onto the grass next to her, still dripping with fresh blood. My wolf growled at the sight, hating that one of our pack members had been killed in such a way and left to bleed out onto the grass with no respect. My rage was above anything that I had felt before, and I let out a pain-angered-filled howl as I watched countless members die. But my howl had seemed to reach more than just my pack leaders, as a large wolf begun to stalk through the battlefield, a large scar going down its left eye, stopping at his jaw. Half the top of his ear was bitten off, obvious teeth marks proving my point. What was extremely disturbing was his eyes through wasn't a red or anything like that which most rogues have. It was pitch black, with the other being a perfect untainted white, which you would only see on the fields of a frosty fresh snow morning. I growled at the leader, his power lapped off him in waves, and what scared me more was how he was an obvious trained fighter, the scars and wound showing the countless fights he's had to face off in. The leader seemed amused by my growl and did a larger one back. I was still bigger in my black wolf form, while he seemed so plain and small in his dark brown, but after we finished growling at each other he decided to make the first move. He pounced. I jumped straight after my wolf, leaping into the air with grace, our just own pet. His wolf's eyes seemed to go wide at the sight. It was a very bad choice to make during a fight. The brown wolf leapt straight into me, his bulky head landing straight into my chest, making me land on top of him, giving me great access to his back, which I gladly took and chomped down with brute force. The leader winced as I did this. He hit the ground first, obviously, since I was sitting on top of him, and he softened the blow for me as I continued to bite at his lower spine, hoping to cut off a nerve or two. The leader seemed mad as he kicked me off him, my wolf rolling away. I quickly ran for him as his back leg seemed to limp from the damage I did. Running as fast as I could, I pounced on him, this time landing my jaws aiming straight for his neck. But being a skilled fighter does you good, and he managed to move out of the way last minute so he could land a bite. He attempted to get my neck, but knowing I wasn't going to get out of his jaws without a scratch, I shoved my body into his mouth instead of my neck so he couldn't kill me just yet. He growled in protest but continued to chomp and claw at my side, making do with the situation. My back legs kicked out before he could dodge, making him lose grasp for a moment so I could use my body weight to push him to the ground. By now all the pack members and rogues had stopped to watch this fight, as it was a fight against the Alphys. This fight determines who lives and who dies, not just for us but for everyone else in these two groups. If one leader dies, the others takes over as leader, meaning the other members could either join, be killed or be banished. A sensation filled me, suddenly making my knees go weak on my wolf. But I managed to stay upright. But this was just the weakness that the Rouge leader needed, as he pounced off the grass and onto my wolf. I was in a daze as I went tumbling along the ground. My head was spinning, but this sensation felt good. What's happening? I screamed out in frustration to my wolf, who seemed to be stuttering and shocked. The Rouge leader had stalked over to me, his large body standing over my own, as his jaws opened and prepared for a final blow. I was attempting to get up, but my mind was dazed, and the leader placed his large paw on my chest, making it unable to move very far. Disquern. It's Ma. My wolf couldn't finish his sentence as a howl of pain erupted through the air. The rogue was pulled off me in a flash, the only thing being seen as his replacement was the blur of brown left in his place. A large thump was heard along the yard soon after, shaking the ground and making pack members cringe in their wolf forms, and countless voices to enter the pack link attempting to question the alpha as confusion filled the air. I stumbled to my paws, feeling light-headed still. But the thing that really caught my attention were the two forms positioned across the yard, more specifically the dead Rouge leader body and that of one very lean and beautiful girl with the unmistakable features of a wolf added to her body. Of either Ava POV seriously thought I would kill off the main character that early. Blood. That was the only thing I craved. The darkness was all around me. It was as if I was placed in a room that dropped the red substance from the walls. The scent was so strong my body was forcing itself to live through death to obtain the one liquid. Blood. My dead arms moved as if a witch had placed me under a curse, forcing my dead limbs to make their way to the shattered balcony that held broken pieces of glass and a scent of my mate. Blood. My nails dug into the dark blue carpet as my aching limbs forced themselves to get closer to the balcony. Blood. The cries and whimpers of pack members and my mate could be heard, making my movements faster, and worried thoughts fill my head. Blood. I climbed top of the silver railing, my eyes darting back and forth watching the scene in front of me, still not yet believing what was happening. Blood. I jumped off the railing with grace in my moments onto the soft ground. Blood. I raced to my mate and the unknown rogue. Blood. Gripping the Rouge's brown fur, I threw his large Famofash's wolf and across the yard. Blood. Sprinting, I made it to the Rouge quicker than expected, holding his neck in place. Blood. The Rouge whimpered as I shattered his neck into the cracks, and cry of pain being heard for miles, making some of the trees even shake. Blood. I penetrated his flesh with my fangs as I drank from his blood vessels. The soft liquid quickly came into my body, instantly rejuvenating me. Once his body was finished, I dropped the now human from rogue to the ground, his body limp and cold, drained of all traces of blood and life. His once pretty brown set of hair and fur was lifeless and shifting to a disgusting grey. His black and white eyes slowly shifted until there was only grey in both. His plum-red cheeks pale and a disgusting light yellow color. His mouth had the slightest stain of blood dripping out the corner of it, and his neck held my bite mark where old blood begun to drip down his cold and lifeless flesh into the grass below. I tensed at the sound of his voice. I knew it was him. I could smell him from miles away. "What are you doing?" I turned slowly around to see Ash's confused gaze watching me closely. His eyes went wide as he watched me. It was disturbing. I was in my nightgown as per usual, my once perfect dress stained red on the front. My once pink lips now a bright red, dripping in the rogue's blood. My tail was soaked in blood, the tip especially sitting in a pool of blood that I didn't drink from the rogue. "What are you?" Ash asked me, perplexed, stepping closer. I took a step back, scared of what he was going to do. "I'm nothing but a monster," I yelled out the best I can. But it was as if I was screaming like any other normal person would on a regular basis. My best guess was from the blood that I drank, which most likely gave me more power and strength. That's what I needed all along. "You disgust me," Ash yelled out. All curiosity and worry out the window, it was just pure hatred and anger towards me now. It honestly hurt. He's my mate, and even that will crush me, even though I'm only part werewolf. My soul was ripped into in that moment, and I knew the next couple of words to leave his mouth will most likely defiantly crush me further. I urged Gavin Reed reject you Ava as my mate and Luna to the Blood Moon pack. Ash stopped to take a breather, his eyes shutting momentarily then opening again, the burning rage never leaving them. "Get off our packlands, rogue," he screamed, and that's when I literally felt my heart shatter in two. Keeping my head held high, I slowly walked to the forest edge, which on the way went past Ash's eyes, never leaving my body. I stopped as I stood next to him, me facing the forest while he faced the pack house. My ears were drawn back enough for everyone to know I wasn't happy or joyful, and it made me look less intimidating. My tail was slack behind me. Not even the sight of my mate can bring back its joyful, shaking nature. "Thank you. I'm glad you let me feel joy for at least once. I am in your debt." Ash obviously seemed confused as I spoke this, but I only spoke the truth. My soul was shattering, but I was glad I've kept the charade going this far. "You know, the moon goddess warned me about this. Told me everything was going to be worse before it got better. Who knew that the worst part would be my mate rejecting me?" I said to Ash with a breath of laughter. The moon goddess's words kept filling my ears, her words speaking to me, retelling all the words and sentences she spoke to me in that dream reality. "Things will only get worse before they get better." Ash looked at me curiously with a slight glance when I addressed our goddess, but I guess he must have thought I was lying or that I was an idiot. I continued my walk till the edge of the forest line. Everyone was either anxious or curious about me, as no one had moved yet, their eyes burning a freaking hole in the back of my head the size of a crater on the moon. But I was upset to see all these eyes on me. I was so different that someone who didn't stare must have had a brain defect. I turned slowly to the whole pack. Ash still had his back to me as I turned, but I knew he was having an internal battle with himself. But the rest of the pack had their eyes glued on me, and only me as I stood next to the tree line, my gown blowing in the breeze, my ears fluffing from the cold, and my tail tucking itself in between my legs as the gazers stayed on me. I thank everyone here for your kindness. I've never been shown this much in a couple of days, and I'm glad I got to make you breakfast this morning. I'm sorry I was born this way. I wish I could take it all back. I gave the crowds one last smile as light, waved, then turned and sprinted away. No one knew, but tears were flooding from my eyes as I sprinted to get off the territory. I may have put on a show then, but this was the normal Ava completely breaking down while she sprinted through a forest, her heart into her soul ripped from her body. What I didn't realize was the pounding of feet next to me as I ran. But my body didn't care at the moment, having more issues than one to deal with at the moment. I breathed a sigh of fresh air as the smell of territory was lost into neutral land was the only thing to be seen. I stopped at an open field, a lake located nearby, the morning sun glittering off the still water. The birds chirped as they flew across the sky, their small wings letting them fly high above the ground and away from danger. The sound of wind hitting leaves filled the air as trees brushed against each other, their branches dangling full of perfectly green leaves ready to drop when autumn decided to return. From the tree line came many other wolves who were panting like something had been logged down their throats, blocking any wind trying to escape. They came in many shades and colors, all eyes sparkling, even though it was early morning. At first I was tense as they all stopped in front of me, their glowing eyes looking up at me proudly and confused as they watched me. With a complete pack following you just after you revealed that you were a dangerous hybrid that could most likely kill you in a second. I should have been scared, right? But the thoughts telling me that I was about to be murdered by a pack of wolves quickly settled down as the scent of hundreds of rogues filled my nostrils. What are you doing? Go back with your rogue boss. I yelled out, annoyed at the army of wolves that ended up following me out into the middle of nowhere. I turned around, putting my back to the wolves as I crossed my arms over my chest in anger, a huff to top it all off, making me look like a bitchy teenager. With all due respect, Alpha. I tensed at the word, Alpha, turning around to watch as one of the many men shifted in front of me, not paying any attention that all his clothes had just ripped in his full glory, not sparing a second glance at the hundreds of wolves watching him as he did. You kinda killed our leader. You are technically the Alpha for us now. The man stood in front of me, his broad shoulders tense, his toned and lean yet muscled as his six-pack was out in the open for the world to see, and I won't go into detail about the area from the waistline down, but he had it open without hesitation. After that, everyone shifted to their human forms. All of them covered in cuts and bruises from the earlier fight, but the horde of without clothes people didn't seem to mind their without clothes-ness, as they all bowed down on one knee, heads down, showing the respect for their newfound Alpha. Wait, I'm your Alpha? I asked, blurting it out. My tone was far from happy, yet annoyed, yet confused, but I couldn't help but feel the slight feeling of smugness that rose from deep within the pits of my stomach. Yes, Alpha. I smiled at the young man. The only thing I could see was the set of black hair that was sporting a good look on his head as he stayed kneeled on the ground. I stepped closer to him, delicately placing my index finger under his chin and lifting his face up so I could see his features clearer. He had a lovely set of black hair and it matched his blue eyes perfectly. I'm guessing you're the beta? The only one to have enough balls to come talk to the raging hybrid. Am I right? I asked expectantly. He nodded his head once and I smiled in approval at his obedience. What's your name? He immediately responded, his eyes lighting up at the opportunity. Nathan. Nathan. His name rolled off my tongue, and it seemed he enjoyed the Alpha's attention that he was receiving as his body slightly shook in happiness. I stood up fully straight now, gazing at my new pack that I apparently own. Most were males, but I was glad to say that I had a good side of females as well as males, all of them looking like very finely trained warriors. I smirked at the one thing I wanted more in life. Do you all wish to have land? A pack house for your own? All heads nodded, everyone standing up straight, staring at their new leader expectantly. My last pack before Blood Moon was evil. I'm glad to say finally that they had the shittiest border protection of all time. I think it's time I paid my old master a visit, I said with a slight laugh at the end, enjoying the power a little too much. This feeling was weird. It was as if all these new emotions and feelings piled into my body at the one time, but the feeling was beautiful. The crowds erupted into cheers and I smiled along with them. These were officially my pack members, all of them accepting me so willingly, unlike what Ash did. My heart clenched at the thought of him, but my smile never faltered looking out at my pack members. Again, be ready, because I'm coming with a pack of my own.